While we guitarists are constantly chasing the latest plugin craze, today I'm asking myself, after 14 years in 2026, is the Kemper Profiler still the king? Or is it already ready for retirement? At the end of this video, I'll give you a conclusion on that, which will certainly surprise many of you. So definitely stay tuned. I've been working with this green box every single day since 2014. And in this video, I'll show you how I use it live in the studio and for teaching. But very importantly, first of all, I'm not being paid by Kemper. This is not a promotional video. Everything I say is my own opinion. And I bought and paid for all the Kempers I own myself. I actually came across it by chance because a valued colleague recommended it to me back then. At first I was quite skeptical and dismissive and said, no, I want to keep playing my tube heads, there's nothing better. Many of you are surely familiar with that argument. Then at the same time, I had a CD production for a rock band in my studio. They brought their guitar tracks along and I was quite impressed by how the guitar signals sounded. So I asked the guitarist back then, what are you actually playing? And he said, Kemper. And at the same time, as I said, came the tip from my guitar colleague who said, just order the thing, you won't regret it. Okay, I said, I'll order the Kemper, but I don't really feel like it because it's basically a computer. And in 3 years, I'll have to tape 20 euros to it. So someone will take it. Yeah, that was my initial attitude. And I ordered it and profiled my existing tube amplifiers. Profiling means with this device, you can make a copy, basically a fingerprint of your tube amplifier. And this fingerprint then sounds identical to the original. I compared that 1-to-1, recorded it in Cubase, high resolution, switched between A and B, and I really couldn't believe it at first. I knew that I would eventually experience it for myself, that digital amps would get so close to the original, but I thought it would take a bit longer. So in short, I was impressed. And I kept the unit, and now I've been working with it almost every day since 2014, as I said, and it fulfills my 4 main pillars, which are live performances, workshops that I create here on YouTube, studio recordings for other bands or for my own projects, and teaching. So basically my students play through it too, or if they want a certain sound or want to record something, I connect them to the Kemper in my studio. I'll show it now. Here you can see my rig last year at a nice open-air festival in the summer. Now you see my rig as it stands here under the desk. This is basically my live rig as well, but I also use it for creating YouTube workshops or any commissioned work for guitar recording projects. Then here's my rig in my school and also my recording studio. And finally, here's the setup that I also use here for studio work. So whenever I have guitar sessions, recording something for CDs, for other bands, or for myself, nowadays there's a whole range of modelers available. There's Fractal Audio, Neural DSP, and Line 6 all make great units. The Kemper was basically a pioneer, the first device of its kind. The Kemper isn't technically a modeler, even if it's often called that. The Kemper is a profiler. There's a slight technical difference there, but I don't want to get too sidetracked. In essence, a Kemper also simulates an existing amplifier's tonal behavior using its own method. But a device like a Fractal Audio does it a bit differently technically, though the end result is the same. Most of you will know this, but I'm sure some aren't familiar with the device yet. The Kemper is truly an all-in-one unit, which means that you are able to create your entire guitar sound with it, including not just amp and cab simulations, but also every single effect you could possibly need, all delivered in absolutely outstanding quality. So it's perfect guitar in and a finished signal out to the FOH or into the DAW. It doesn't get much better than that, and all without any noticeable latency. I've already taken this thing to Sri Lanka for gigs in the USA. Theoretically, you could save your entire setup onto a USB stick. Travel with that USB stick and your guitar, then rent a Kemper on site, like I did in Sri Lanka, and load your setup and you're done. You have your usual sound without even having to lug the device around. So it has a lot of advantages nowadays, not having to travel with 400 kilograms of guitar gear and going broke in the process. Okay, let me give you a quick and dirty explanation of profiling. It works like this. You plug your guitar signal into the Kemper. I'll also show a graphic up here so you can visualize it better. From the Kemper, it goes via a direct out on the back into the input of the guitar amp you want to copy. From your guitar amp, it goes into the cabinet you're using. Then the signal is sent to the speaker, just a normal guitar signal, and is mic'd up from there. Of course, it depends on what microphone you use and where you place it. Check out my workshop on that. And from the microphone, it essentially just goes back into the Kemper like you might expect, almost like a loop. Then you begin the profiling process, and the Kemper sends a series of carefully designed test signals through the entire chain, meaning the amplifier, the cabinet, and the microphone, and then receives them back through the microphone. Through this roughly 2-minute process, it measures the circuit, the full behavior of the speaker, tubes, preamp, power amp, mic, and diaphragm. Everything is saved and captured. And then you'll have a digital fingerprint of exactly this situation and this circuit. You can then save that, and it sounds exactly the way you set it up and the way you measured it. The great thing is also, once you have your digital copy, your fingerprint, you can still adjust it afterwards. So you can say, I want a little bit less gain, I want more gain, I want less treble, or whatever else. So you can do some fine-tuning on your profile and adjust it precisely to the needs that you might have. If that's too complex for you, you can also buy these profiles online for a few euros. I sell my sounds too, because I'm often asked how I managed to do that. And people often write to me who aren't that happy with their sounds on their Kemper, and accordingly I offer them for a few euros. You're welcome to order from me if you'd like. I have various sounds, and I've also done several workshops about them. Clean, metal, solo, crunch, you'll find all sorts of things there. So as I said, I'll put the link for you below the video. In this video, my goal isn't to talk you into buying the Kemper. Like I said, there are many other good devices of this kind. It's just for the sake of completeness to explain to you how you can also create a good guitar sound. Because my little series here started with how to properly mic an existing tube amp and a corresponding cabinet, how that works. Then I introduced you to attenuators and IR loaders. Then there was the basic principle of plugins, how to create a good guitar sound on the computer with plugins. And now, for the sake of completeness, we're at point 4, the modelers. And there are, as I said, various devices. And in my case, I'd like to explain the modeler, the Kemper, to you accordingly. Okay, then let's move on to the live situation. Live mixers especially love it when you don't make a hell of a noise on stage, like a jet engine taking off. Because if you already have an enormous volume on stage, a front of house mixer usually has no chance at all to establish any kind of balance. So nowadays, I only play 2 112 cabinets on stage. And that's only so that I have feedback. They aren't mic'd up at all anymore. My XLR signal goes into a splitter first, from there to the FOH guy at the mixing desk. And the other path goes through our in-ear system. That means we play with in-ears, and that gives wonderful control. No matter where I am on stage, I always have the same sound and wonderful stereo in my ears. Really perfect and highly recommended. Okay, then next we'll move on to the recording situation. We can take the setup for the YouTube workshops here as an example. That's exactly how it works technically when I record CD productions. I'll show you a graphic of how my signal path runs. So the guitar goes into the Kemper as usual. From there, I have a connection via SPDIF into my interface or sound card. Why use SPDIF? SPDIF is a digital interface. That means your guitar signal is converted at the Kemper's input from analog to digital. Then it goes out digitally via SPDIF into the sound card, so it stays on the digital level and isn't converted back to analog at the Kemper output. And then back to digital again at the sound card's input. Every conversion process is subject to certain losses. Even if the converters are very good, I deliberately wanted to stay on the digital level and not have a constant switching from digital to analog. That's one way, that's my digital Kemper signal with the amp-in effects. The other way is a direct signal at the output of the Kemper. There's a direct out there, and that's where my raw pickup signal basically runs through. This means that in addition to the 2 tracks from my Kemper signal, I'm recording another one as well, namely the analog pickup signal. Why do I do that? Imagine you're doing a workshop and you have some crunch sound, you want to show an AC/DC riff or something, and afterwards you don't like the sound that you recorded. Maybe you've been playing for 2 hours, and then you realize there's too much distortion, or there was accidentally a delay on it. If you have the raw pickup signal, you can basically send this pickup signal through the Kemper again so you don't have to replay everything, and basically assign another amplifier or a different sound to this pickup signal. So you have complete freedom even after the fact. Or if you say you want to use this pickup signal for a plugin, or you want to send it to a recording studio because there's a great amp there you want to hear it through. Anything's possible. You've now seen how I use it live and in the studio, but now I'd like to get to the core message. Why has Moser been playing a device for 14 years with an ancient CPU? There are so many faster devices on the market that have much higher computing power than the Kemper. We live in a time where the industry convinces us that we need a new miracle device every 6 months or an even better plug-in to finally sound good. But let's be honest, do our heroes Angus Young or Brian May sound so good because they change their setup every week? No, they sound so good because they know their equipment inside and out. I'll show you a graphic for that, which we'll discuss together now. You're the little figure at the top with the question mark. Point 1. A new hype reaches you in the form of a YouTube video, a report in a guitar magazine, or a statement from some guitarist you think is great. There's a new plugin, you have to have it. There's a new amp, you have to have it. So what happens to you? I have to buy that because then I'll definitely sound much, much better. You buy the gear or the software, you have to learn it. You get an update, you reconfigure your entire rig. At home or live. A huge effort in terms of time and money. Then you have to set everything up. Good clean sound, good rhythm sound, good solo sound. You go to the rehearsal room with the band and realize, it doesn't sound like it did before. Maybe it was the wrong buying decision after all. What happens? You buy something else again. What I want to say with this is, I've been using the Kemper for so long because I know exactly what I need to do when I want to achieve a result. In 5 minutes, I recently recreated The Sound of Satisfaction by Keith Richards from the 60s. Actually, almost an impossible task. I know in 10 seconds I can get a good clean sound. I can get a fat metal tone. I just don't have to worry about it anymore. That gives me peace of mind, and it gives my wallet peace too because I don't have to constantly buy something new. I'm not stressed when I walk through the Guitar Summit. I can walk through it completely relaxed because I know I have everything I need. We live in a culture where we basically expect the solution with one mouse click. The industry wants to convince us that the magic sound is just a click subscription away with one mouse click. But I'm telling you right now, first get to know the tools you own properly. Go deep, spend some time with them. It takes time. I also took years to get really good results out of my Kemper that I was perfectly happy with. That doesn't happen overnight. It's a development process. You're always learning something new. You try out a new parameter. And at some point you reach the stage where you realize, yes, that was the parameter. With that, I could eliminate the harsh highs that always annoyed me. Or yes, I just needed a different cabinet. And suddenly the fizz is gone or the bass rumble. Sometimes it's just simple things like that, because nowadays it's no longer the case that the Fractal audio device or the Kemper or the Line 6 is somehow better or worse. With all of these devices, you can achieve excellent results. These devices can actually all produce any sound and produce very good sounds too. There are, as you know, differences in menu navigation. Sometimes one approach appeals to you more, sometimes the other. Sometimes it's also the haptics, nice metal housings or whatever, or good buttons that are easy to press. It's always the overall impression, which is made up of many parameters. But you don't have to constantly chase after the latest device. Last week, for example, someone wrote to me who saw an old video of mine on YouTube, Dorian Mode, I think it was, and he said, "Wow, how did you make that guitar sound?" And I answered him, to be honest, I don't even know anymore. I think that was my old Boss GT8. Somehow plugged straight into the computer. Where you think to yourself, wow, that's ancient. And how can you get a good sound out of that? But I'll tell you what, better to spend more time practicing than tweaking parameters all day long and searching for your sound. Because the sound, I know the saying is old and worn out, comes from the fingers 90% of the time and not from the most expensive plug-in you can buy, or the priciest modeler, or the most expensive amp head in the world. You have to practice, you have to engage with the instrument, you have to play, listen closely, practice techniques, make music. As the good Udo Pipper once wonderfully said when he tested a €300,000 Les Paul a few years ago. His opening sentence was, "Guys, I don't sound a bit better on this instrument than on my guitar." I thought that was fantastic. You couldn't really start a review any better than that. I decided not to see this little green box as a computer, but as my instrument. I've mastered it. And that's exactly the point. A new device might give you inspiration for 2 weeks. But a mastered device gives you peace and freedom because you can devote yourself more to your instrument and you don't have to constantly chase some myth that promises you'll finally sound good. I see it with a lot of students at my music school too. They spend hours dealing with some setups or some programming, or read up on how this or that amp sounds or what tubes are in there, but they don't practice. All their time is spent on that kind of research. And I always say, if you practiced more instead of tweaking parameters, you'd be much better by now. Unfortunately, the naked truth that hurts every now and then. Okay, alright, I hope I wasn't too blunt with you, but I'd like to tell you the truth here on my channel and not tell you some myth. If you liked the video, please be so kind. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and ideally hit the bell icon too. That gives me more reach, and maybe I can save more guitarists from such misconceptions. Thanks. As mentioned, if you're a Kemper user and maybe like the sounds you heard in my intro, you're welcome to download them. The link is below the video. There's a few years of experience in there, and I've already had great feedback from many people that they finally have their dream sound. But as I said, I don't want to talk you into anything here. Okay, then rethink the situation and consider whether you might be able to achieve a good sound with your existing equipment after all. And whether you perhaps haven't spent enough time with the gear yet, because most people actually have everything, 3 or even 4 times over. I have a lot of stuff too. I don't want to exclude myself. I could probably open a music store, but as I said, the experience goes deep into the subject matter. Give the devices a chance, and not just for a day or two, you have to grow into it. Good, I'm off to the next workshop. I'd like to thank you very much for watching and say take care, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye.